It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I feel like they're giving me a lot of billing that's maybe undeserved. I'm really trying to represent the voice of our team, and particularly our maintenance team, and our journey as we're working through PDM and our journey towards reliability-centered maintenance. I am not only a vice president at our manufacturing plant in San Antonio, Texas, but I'm also the maintenance SOAR leader, and that's what I'm going to spend some time talking to you today about, which is really our regional organization of maintenance members and how we're trying to drive improvement up through our organization. And we always start our presentations at Toyota with a safety commitment, so I feel compelled to do that here. My safety commitment is to create a work environment that empowers our team to find and fix problems. I want to talk a little bit about Texas and the San Antonio plant. We've got a little over $3 billion invested there since we broke ground in 2003. And we built the Toyota Tundra, which we're very proud of. And soon, we will be building the Toyota Sequoia in our facility, and we have capacity to build about 208,000 SUVs and trucks per year. We are part of a bigger operation in Texas. The San Antonio plant employs about 3,700 team members, and we also have nearly 5,600 employees on our site. On our campus, we have over 20 on-site suppliers, and they supply things like resin parts or shell body subassemblies to our manufacturing operation. Our headquarters is also in Texas, in Plano, and then we have a very, very large dealer footprint with Gulf States Toyota in Texas. And we're part of a much bigger North America manufacturing operation. This slide shows we have 10 manufacturing plants in the United States, and we also have 2 plants in Mexico and 1 in Canada. We say 1, but there's actually 3 different plants inside our TMMC facility there in Canada. And so, you know, we've had a footprint here for a very long time in the United States, and of course, from a larger perspective, we still have connection to TMC Toyota Motor Company in Japan. Today, I want to spend some time talking about our journey in North America towards adopting predictive maintenance and then what we're doing moving forward to transform to reliability-centered maintenance. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we do not have a centralized maintenance function, and I attribute this to, you know, you hear a lot about Toyota, think about standardization, and our equipment itself is quite standardized in regards to how it's designed and fabricated and delivered to our production facilities. But if you've read any of the things about Toyota, if you've read about our effort for Kaizen or continuous improvement, which is really one of our tenets, and part of that is the allowance that at a manufacturing site, at a manufacturing facility, that once that equipment is delivered and we have standards in place, we're always trying to Kaizen and improve that equipment. And so that means we have different organization structures, we have different maintenance systems. At each of our facilities, there's a little bit of uniqueness, and this is even the case in Japan. So in order to develop an opportunity for us to share best practices and to share our Kaizens from plant to plant, we have this organization that we call SOAR, which is Shop Optimization Across the Region. And this is representatives from all of our North America manufacturing plants, and I have the honor to be the executive leader of this group of folks specific to maintenance within our North America region. And then we have a liaison connection to TMC, Toyota Motor Company. They similarly do what they call shop by shop, which is where the plants in Japan are cross-sharing information. And we meet periodically to really try to learn from one another and share best practices. Another thing we do is we identify common problems that we need to work together to solve. And that's something that has really been at the forefront of our activity these last couple of years. I did not make the slide, and I want to make clear I am not a technical expert on Industry 4.0, but what I am is a voice and a resource for those who are. And I try to make sure that their message is getting to our top leaders and that we're prioritizing appropriately. And so that SOAR team that I just talked about, in 2017, we started to see best practices that were coming forward from our manufacturing facilities that were looking at PDM equipment and also just manual vibration measurement and things that we were doing to avoid downtime. This is a simple example from one of our plants in Kentucky, and that plant has some very old equipment. Our Kentucky plant's our oldest plant in North America, and this particular blanking line was installed and it's about 5 years past its expected lifetime. So the maintenance organization here in this plant is up to 80 strokes per minute. It cuts high gauge, thick, and ultra high strength steel. So there's a lot of wear and tear on this equipment. And they decided that they had to sustain the life of the equipment, they needed to do something different with the maintenance. So they added additional preventative maintenance measures, but one of their team members on the floor who was really passionate about the opportunity for PDM went through and did a failure mode analysis and determined what are the component level items on this machine that can break down, and started implementing KCF sensors. And this is an example of vibration and temperature analysis on a bearing for the uncoiler. Ultimately, this was one of those many success stories that I think a lot of you in the audience have had, or you probably wouldn't be here, where found an alarm, ultimately saw that we were trending in the wrong direction, able to re-grease the bearing, and prevented 4 hours worth of downtime. And blanking lines on the very front end of our operation, so that could have ultimately caused multiple downtime across that shop. So as those types of stories started being shared across the region within our SOAR group, we started seeing more and more interest in adopting PDM sensors. And so under the guidance of Joe Lee, who is here, if you have the chance to meet Joe, I encourage you to do that. He is our PDM leader for our maintenance organization, and he's a manager in my group at TMMTX in our paint shop. Joe worked with the team to develop a more deliberate strategy to implement PDM on our A-rank equipment across the region. And we define A-rank as critical equipment that if we had a failure would be difficult to back up. And so he and his team put together that strategy and started deploying. And you can see here some of the different types of sensors and equipment that we've deployed. Many are KCF. As a whole, our maintenance SOAR folks have just found a great partnership with KCF. And not only have we deployed things that are on the shelf, but the items here that are listed that have the little Toyota symbol, that's where we've had a need, and we've gone to the team and said, there's an opportunity here. We can't find a device to do such and such, and they've been able to come to the table and develop something for us. So we put together that A-rank strategy. We started deploying sensors across the region. And at the end of the day, this is where we were coming out at the end of last year's calendar year. We've implemented nearly 9,000 sensors across our region. And if you were to look at, these are just case study after case study where we've had those catches, those wins, the opportunity to prevent downtime, which in turn is driving up our operational availability. And this is the story for us that has been very important to get our leadership on board, because I will tell you, as the SOAR leader, one of the first things that I encountered when I took on this role in 2019 is some of our plants that were wanting to move forward with PDM were struggling to get their leadership in their facility to spend the money. It got down to this question of return on investment. And for a plant that's running 98% operation rate, for plants that are already running really, really well, where our existing maintenance systems and TPM have worked well for us as part of our Toyota way and Toyota culture, there were questions about why we should be investing in building this infrastructure. And so the more we could show this cost avoidance and these win cases, we started to get more and more traction with our leadership. From there, we did have some hiccups, some curves in the road, though, because we started to see missed opportunities. Plants that were investing the money, but they weren't responding for say, we might have an alarm, or there might be an email that came from KCF that said that we needed to go check a particular piece of equipment for an issue. And what we found is that despite the fact that we had put sensors everywhere, we had not done the training. We hadn't properly prepared our members for how to respond. And then we also didn't have good systems in place to make sure that all those sensors had batteries that were working and that the infrastructure was staying strong. So we took a little bit of a dip here, and we had to go back and rethink. And our maintenance SOAR team, again under Joe's leadership, pulled together what we call a Jishuken, which is where we pull a team from across the organization and we problem solve together. And you know, at Toyota, it always starts with, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Well, in that case, the problem we were trying to solve is how can we deploy this equipment more effectively for all of our manufacturing facilities? And so with that, you know, we decided that one of the keys for us were putting together guidelines, standards, procedures, and training. And I'm going to give another shout out to KCF because we've really leveraged the KCF Academy for this. And so for those of you who have not used KCF Academy, this is a screenshot of my profile where I go in and actually as new equipment is being introduced, I'll get on the Academy and I'll go through the training for the IoT hub so I can at least sound like I know what I'm talking about when people ask me questions. So, you know, it's a great resource, it's a great tool, and it's really allowed us to make sure our members within our organization are getting the same training, and we haven't had to invest in that from our own perspective. So this has been a great tool, and it got us over the hump of making sure that all of our members that were using the technology understand it. And then now, where are we? Coming into 2022, really, we've shifted focus a little bit to talk about how do we take all of the sensors, how do we take what we're doing from a PDM perspective, and then incorporate that into a reliability-centered maintenance program where we're looking also at machine attribute data, and we can start to go onto that journey in regard to regression analysis and being able to predict failure and not just talk about downtime, but the health of the machine. So Joe, again, lots of shout outs here to Joe Lee. Joe put this slide together with his team to kind of help explain that journey to our leaders of how we started really into predictive, being able to do real-time condition-based monitoring. But that next step for us is not just looking at downtime prevention, but how we optimize our assets and how we look at machine health and how we are able to extend the life of our assets, reduce capital investment, and of course continue to be more efficient in our operations, particularly with our maintenance side as we're working towards our maintenance systems. So this image has gone very far within our organization to try to very simply show some of those steps and some of the opportunities if we can make that leap and jump to smart manufacturing and to machine reliability. So as a result of this, last year, we decided to reorganize our maintenance SOAR group. And 2 key points here. First, we added some folks in our maintenance SOAR to talk about how do we teach this from a maintenance mindset perspective. You've already heard that from 2 other speakers today about how we think about we're not just repairing equipment, but how we're extending the life of those assets and changing our mindset and our thinking way. We also had to partner, this image shows an organization called MPIC. MPIC is a group inside our enterprise that has recently been developed. It's a manufacturing production innovation center. And these folks are working on things long-term in regard to connected assets and our long-term vision for how we're going to transform towards Industry 4.0. And so we've got to get connected to them. And that's a key learning point for me. If you're with a big company and this is an enterprise level solution, understanding who are the decision makers who ultimately are probably going to write the business case and determine the business value as we work towards digitalization, and how we, manufacturing, in particular the voice of the maintenance member who interfaces with your equipment all day long, how we get a seat at the table to make sure that we're influencing those decisions. So we reorganized Maintenance SOAR, we made that connection to our enterprise level folks, and then we started working on some proof of concepts. At Texas, our proof of concept particularly has been with KCF. And you're going to hear about their Smart Diagnostics 4.0, and so I'm not going to go through this presentation in great detail because I think there's some opportunities to learn in the next 24 hours. But we partner with KCF to deploy our their smart diagnostic platform in our paint shop. And ultimately, what we wanted to look at was, again, that A-rank asset coverage, how we connect that not only to sensors, but we understand machine attribute and pull in PLC data, and then how we use that and visualize it from everybody from the maintenance floor technician all the way up to senior leadership within our organization so that you can see the health of the equipment. And then the next steps for us, which are currently in process, is how are we connecting this to our maintenance team member through our ERP, where they're being notified of a problem and not having to go to a dashboard to pull data out. We did go through, and I'm going to skip to the next one just to show some of the assets that we deployed in our paint shop. So we've really seen some good results with the IoT hub, and also, of course, you can see we had to put a number of base stations in. But this is just an example of kind of the old versus the new way with the IoT hub, being able to trigger specifically when you have a PLC input so that you're able to better make sense of the data and determine when you have an anomaly. We've also got a machine care score that we're able to see real time as visualization. And in addition to that, this dashboard, which shows geospatially our paint shop, you're able to see if you have an alert in a particular area looking at the layout of the shop. And then a little bit difficult to see in this slide, but the new dashboard lets us see specifically at the asset level if we have any alarms or anything to be concerned about. We've had some good insights. This is another meter that just shows us like a 60-day health score and another methodology through a matrix form to look over time of where you're going from unhealthy to healthy or vice versa. And then another visualization that's available on that dashboard to help you understand when you have a very severe input and something that needs attention immediately. This is a case, a real life example of how we used the POC with KCF and found something that we would not have found otherwise. So in this condition, you can see that we started to see something happening there from this is a fan in our paint shop. And what we weren't in any sort of risk of immediate downtime, so we were coming out of our winter shutdown, and at the end of the winter shutdown, our maintenance team went back and looked to try to figure out what happened that could have caused that kind of anomaly. And something as simple as during our winter shutdown, we had used the wrong grease for a PM on the bearings for this particular piece of equipment. And then you can see the anomaly that happened, and then after we applied the correct grease, we went back into a good health condition on the equipment. So these are some examples of how we've used the case study. We've been really pleased with what we've seen from our perspective in our maintenance and with our engineering group in our paint shop. And the next step for us, which I spoke to, was how we get this connected into our ERP, which for us is Maximo. We use Maximo to be able to plan our work orders. And so our intention is to be able to push this or any of these alarms directly to Maximo. And it could be with a wearable, it could be with a different smart tool for the maintenance member, but they're able to respond immediately. So that's one case study that we've done at our plant, but there are, unfortunately, and maybe it's not unfortunate, but as it is in an organization where we don't have a single maintenance function that's driving a direction, in absence of that, we've got multiple plants across our organization that are doing their own thing or doing their own proof of concept with, could be another company, or in some cases, we've got folks who are doing things that are very homegrown for themselves. So our path moving forward is not so straight. But at the same time, I believe that in my role as a maintenance SOAR leader for our organization, we can set a path that will get us to the right place if we start with that tenet of what's the problem we're trying to solve. So last week, we pulled together maintenance subject matter experts from across our organization, across North America. We had a 2-day conference. And the purpose of that conference was to go through, as we're shifting to Industry 4.0 and digitalization, and we're talking about reliability-centered maintenance and what we need in a system, what are the necessary criteria that we're trying to achieve? What is the ideal condition? And the team went through for hours looking at various items, all the way from a wearable that the maintenance member would wear to be able to get the alert, to what type of FMEA we need to be doing to determine the potential failure modes of our component level in the equipment. We spent 2 days scouring through and putting our proposal together of what's an ideal condition. And then the next step for us is then pulling back from that and using that criteria along with the different proof of concepts that have been done across the organization to judge which way we want to go. Also with some consideration for some non-functional requirements like cost, scalability, and lead time. And so our target from here is how we get the voice of our maintenance members in front of our top leaders for our organization from the enterprise and make sure that when they're working on their solution, what I see is people at very high level of the company, they're seeing things about supply chain and how this data can connect and how it's going to be used in the long run for the overall enterprise and organization. Somehow we have to connect that down to what makes the job better for the maintenance member and ultimately improves our OA for our production facilities, and shift the conversation from not just OA and downtime, but asset optimization. So that's what we're trying to do. That's the journey that we're on, and maybe when I come back next year, I'll be able to tell you how it's turned out, because we've still got a lot of work to do and a lot to learn. But thank you for letting me share our journey with you, and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Susann. That was very comprehensive. Again, I'm running back and forth, checking the chats and the questions and stuff. You just described the Maintenance SOAR Summit that you had. Very powerful. I love the image. Some of the questions that were coming in were around the training you do. So you described how you discovered it wasn't the if you build it, they will come, right? Just because we put sensors on machines doesn't mean people are going to pay attention. So anything else you can share about what training looks like at Toyota for your maintenance team, how often you do it, who's involved, anything about what it looks like for them?
Yeah, a great question. So all of our maintenance members, as they join us, go through what we call fundamental skills training, which has very specific hands-on coursework that's done through each plant has a centralized group that does that training. And we even have connection to globally, as you can imagine, Toyota, our global production center has specific maintenance training that we have to make sure that our courses are able to meet and we're able to deploy to our maintenance members. But we are lacking when it comes to this subject matter of connected assets and as it relates to Industry 4.0. So we're building that content right now. We're using a lot of what we've learned from KCF in regard to that material. And I would say another learning point that a couple of our manufacturing plants are bringing forward and that we intend to adopt is how we teach our maintenance technicians, not just engineers, but our maintenance technicians to do FMEA analysis. By being able to go through that detail down to the component level, identify failure modes, then they're going to be able to own what we're doing long term in regard to trying to introduce machine health.
That's really interesting. It's exciting to hear, right? Because we hear about the connected worker, but it's taking maintenance technicians and teaching them how to engage with software, the modern day version of the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, right, to do that FMEA. Very nicely done. Let's thank Susann one more time.